Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the information in this presentation is not to be or construed as investment advice. The information presented are subject to change without notice, and while we have made every reasonable effort to ensure that the content is reliable and accurate, we have not independently verified the content and are not responsible for errors therein. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets. Hi everyone, my name is Richard Diaz and welcome back to the IceCap Canadian Market Wrap. In this week's video, we're going to discuss the BOC's monetary policy meeting held last Wednesday. We'll briefly touch on the decision itself, but we'll focus on something that was said in the press conference that must be challenged, and that is Canada's relationship with the United States, and we'll use the recent Canadian data to further explore that. First, the monetary policy decision. The Bank of Canada held its target for the overnight rate at 2.25%. This was totally expected. The Governing Council judged that the current policy rate appropriate, conditional on the economy evolving broadly in line with the outlook published in the quarterly monthly policy report. However, in the press conference, they repeatedly mentioned the word uncertainty. And I'll give the BOC credit here. They are unclear about how this trade war will play out, and so they are choosing to remain cautious with the direction and the pace of future rate decisions. As an aside, Carolyn Rogers, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada, mentioned that this year would see the biggest number of mortgages coming up for renewal in decades, as a lot of them were taken out during a low-rate environment. This chart highlights the important, if imperfect, link between the BOC's rate decisions, in blue, and the 5-year government bond yield, in red, and the insured mortgage rates of 3 to 5 years, in gray. It also has those dots, which for the uninitiated are basically market expectations of the future path of interest rates. For those expecting much lower interest rates this summer, last Wednesday's meeting would have been a major disappointment. Those dots are not magic, and they can and will change as time passes and new data is revealed. But what they are currently suggesting is that the rate cut cycle is over for now, and there's even a chance of a rate hike next Christmas. Now, I'm very skeptical of any hikes this year at all, but this is what the traders are betting on, so take it for what you will. In my view, the shape of the curve of expectations is due mostly to uncertainty, and that was a major theme of the BOC's press conference, as well as the monetary policy report released the same day. Again, for the uninitiated, the monetary policy report is a long and comprehensive assessment of the global and Canadian economies published by the BOC. Each quarter, they provide an economic forecast on which the BOC bases its monetary policy decisions, and they dive into different themes and topics depending on the quarter, such as U.S. trade and mortgage renewals, delinquencies, youth unemployment, etc. The Governing Council judged that the current policy rate is appropriate in line with the outlook published. However, it's worth noting that the economic outlook is little changed from October. Now, it's not clear to me that this is at all fair, given that so much has changed in terms of growth, market volatility, and geopolitics, but it is what it is. Now, there is a lot in that report, and clearly we can't go over all of it. But the basic conclusion is that UF tariffs are bad for Canada, and that's pretty obvious. The question remains about how long the pain will last, where in the economy the pain will be most acute, and what should happen should we eventually renegotiate some kind of deal. There's also a bigger question about CUSMA, the Canadian, US, and Mexico trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, and we'll have a video specifically about that as we head into the spring. Now, this chart is from the report and shows just how uneven the distribution of the impacts from the tariffs are. There is still a lot of tariff-free trade with the United States. Some estimates are about 89 to 90%. There'll be more on that in a minute. But first, I want to address comments from the press conference. Tiff stated several times that, and I quote, "The era of open, rules-based trade with the United States is over," end quote. And today, he repeated the remarks in a speech at the Empire Club in Toronto. In my view, these comments go far outside the remit of a central banker and dip into the realm of politics. I think they're outrageous, frankly, and more importantly, they're unsupported by the data, and in due course will be proven wrong. Before I refute that wild and reckless claim, I'll concede that we are in a different world now. This table is from the Monetary Policy Report and indeed shows us that before 2025, U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods were basically nil, and now they average about 6%. However, Mr. Macklin failed to point out that this 6% is by far one of the lowest in the world. This is because of the CUSMA, the Canadian-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement that replaced NAFTA, which is up for negotiation this summer, and for which a cynical person might think that Tiff Macklin's pointed comments were meant to undermine. Furthermore, in today's speech, Tiff went on to say that the U.S. has, quote, rejected open trade. And to that I say, what free and open trade? This chart is of tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers charged by G20 countries to other countries that they trade with. And as you can plainly see, tariffs and importantly, non-tariff trade barriers are extremely popular, and indeed they remain so. In some cases, these tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers were triple that of the U.S. And now I want to be perfectly clear. This is not at all to defend the U.S. protectionist policies or the way they've gone about it, certainly against their allies. I think it's a dumb strategy overall. But I also think that Canada's policies versus its allies is equally dumb, and they serve only to enrich the oligopolies that run Canada. But I digress. The reason I think that those remarks are so asinine is because of basic math. Firstly, for an enormous number of U.S. states, Canada is the number one trading partner. This is a function of geography, history, and profitability. The idea that these states would close the border to a huge client does not stand to reason. Furthermore, the electorate matters. There are thousands and thousands of businesses that count on Canada, and it is my belief that common sense, greed, and political calculation will ultimately prevail. Will it be different going forward? Yes. But is rules-based trade over? No. Secondly, the U.S. is not going to tariff heavy crude oil. This chart is a mirror image of the chart that we have shared with you many times. It is the U.S. current account balance, but with Canada, or the trade flow from the U.S. perspective. What this chart makes very clear is that in aggregate, the U.S. sells Canada goods and services in red and green at the top, and Canada sells the U.S. oil, the gray line. Yes, we understand that there's much more nuance than that, but this is the sum of the parts. These massive crude oil shipments also completely explain the U.S. trade deficit President Trump has so often complained about. So again, let's ask ourselves, is this trade flow over? No. Canada's biggest export will continue to flow freely because of the 400,000 kilometers of pipeline that connect our two countries. The U.S. produces lighter, sweeter crude, and they need to import heavy crude oil. Now, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Venezuela and how it was a mismatch because of time and money, but this is the exact crude oil that Canada has in spades. Nearly all of the 4.5 or 5 million barrels of oil per day that Canada produces is transported via pipeline through the major refineries in the Midwest and that are specifically designed to process the oil into useful products. For the U.S. to replace this with imports from other countries is nearly impossible. Yes, even Venezuela. And would destabilize key economic infrastructure in America. And these are finely tuned oil markets, and it doesn't make any sense to replace it as of yet. The bottom line is that Canada sends 76% of its goods exports to the United States. Proximity and pipelines matter. Now, should Canada find new markets? Yes, of course. But let's not kid ourselves. Canada is never going to fully replace the U.S., and therefore to suggest the era of open, rules-based trade with the United States is over is dramatic, disassociated from reality, and frankly unbecoming of a central banker. So why all the fuss about rising trade with non-U.S. markets? Well, there's been a shift in export flow, and to be clear, this is a good thing. Our exports to other markets have jumped. Unfortunately, the devil is in the details. Canada's total exports are slightly down on the year, reflecting an unwind of the tariff front-running. However, this also masks the extent to the shock, a positive one, as rising gold prices and the surge of exports to the U.S. early this year to get ahead of the tariffs boosted nominal year-to-date figures. Through November, exports to the U.S. are down about $25 billion, despite the fact that a bulk, or almost 9 out of 10 items, are still crossing the border, being compliant with CUSMA and therefore exempt from tariffs. As you can see from the chart, the biggest decline is from oil, and this is in part due to prices, but also temporary shutdowns in refineries. The other two are vehicles and steel, which are clearly affected by the tariffs. So what explains the increase in non-U.S. market trade? Quite simply, it was the near doubling in the gold price, as well as massive increases in industrial and other precious metals, as well as some crude oil via the TMX pipeline. And this chart makes it crystal clear. As you can see from the bottom, gold exports to the UK year-to-date dwarfed the commodity exports from other countries. Is this sustainable? Probably not. The reality is that gold prices can and do fluctuate. Meanwhile, the U.S. will continue to be our main trading partner, whether Tiff Macklem likes it or not. All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and follow for more. And as always, we manage money for families all across Canada and the world.